All right, what's up? Welcome in. Wes Mitchell here, Chris Clark. A Monday morning episode of GC Live. Of course, talking about South Carolina-LSU, but some breaking news for the Gamecocks yesterday that we're going to get to here and really focus on that quite a bit, I think, to start the show. Before we do, let me tell you about our friends over at CMG Home Loans, our guy Clint Hammond, ClintHammond.com, 803-422-6797, NMLS number 71597. I mean, y'all know the drill at this point. You've heard us talk about Clint for years now. So basically, the short version is if you're thinking about owning a home, if you want to own a home, if you've even just considered buying a home, call up Clint. Let him walk you through just every single step of what this might look like. It's going to look at your financial picture, going to look at what other things you have going on, kind of look at what your dreams and goals are, and then he's going to help you come up with a plan. Just like he did for me and my family, he can do the exact same for you. Again, 803-422-6797. And if you want to just go research some more information about what Clint does, just head on over to ClintHammond.com.
So also tell everybody about our friends over at Ferry Chevrolet. That's ferrychevrolet.com. If you want to go check out their website, FAIREY Chevrolet.com or 803-937-4531. Led by a fourth-generation dealer in Joseph Ferry, a business that started about 100 years ago in 1926, right here in the Palmetto State in St. Matthews, now conveniently located in Orangeburg. So that's off of I-26 between Columbia and Charleston. Well worth a visit if you want to go check them out. If you're in the market for a newer used vehicle, if you think you might be in the market for a newer used vehicle, support the businesses that support us at GamecockCentral.com and here on GC Live. Honesty, integrity, a handshake. That's how the folks over at Ferry Chevrolet still operate to this day. And if you don't want to go there in person right now, understandable. You can go check out their inventory, new and used vehicles over at ferrychevrolet.com, or again, give them a call, 803-937-4531. Appreciate their support. If you're in the market, if you're thinking about being in the market for a vehicle, make sure that they are your first call.
Definitely appreciate all of our sponsors and certainly those two awesome sponsors. I want to bookmark this because I've seen this take quite a few places, and I want to make a little note here to try to come back to this. Michael says, LSU showed us how South Carolina should be using Nick Harbor with their big, just jumbo hybrid tight end receiver. Green, absolute stud, was a difference maker in this game. I want to come back to that. But Chris, we've got to start with kind of what I would say ended up owning the day yesterday. I was diving into South Carolina-LSU, trying to rewatch the game, trying to put together some thoughts. That's typically what we do on Sundays. And then we start getting these texts like, hey, Teasley may be out. This thing happened pretty quickly, honestly, in terms of like it happens, word starts to sort of leak out, confirm it, put it out. And then a little bit later on, it becomes official from the university that Lonnie Teasley is out. Shane Beamer moving on from him. Parted ways, I believe, is the way they officially described it. And Sean Elliott will take over for the South Carolina offensive line room for this year, at least at this point. And so, Chris, this is some news that, you know, the more you kind of gathered on it, you know, obviously was not like some knee-jerk thing. We all saw the game on Saturday night, and again, we'll get into it. There actually was some good from the offensive line on Saturday in terms of the run game, but in a lot of ways, for me, Chris, the first play of the game against LSU was kind of like a microcosm of the rest of the game and of the season. And then if you just look at the game itself and a lot of the things on offense, it was kind of a microcosm of a lot of the issues we have seen for the rest of the season and some of the issues we saw last year as well. And I thought Beamer did put it pretty accurately, pretty succinctly when he said, this was on a teleconference yesterday, I really thought with the signs we saw last year that there would be those improvements this year. And that was one thing other than, you know, a lot of the other reasons we had already put out. That was one like just specific way of wording it that I had not picked up yet. that I think makes a lot of sense. Like, this decision was a culmination of everything, right? But it was kind of, when you look at the fact that there were, whether people want to believe it or not, there were some good signs from the offensive line last year, but you were still going, they got to keep coming on. They've got to take another step forward. And I'll put myself in this category. A lot of people certainly thought, hey, you've got guys who've been in the program 2 years now, 3 years now, highly recruited guys. You've added some impact guys from the portal. You were going, not that they have to be dominant, but there's going to be some level of improvement here. We really just have not seen that overall. Yes, there have been injuries. Like, if you want to have a nuanced conversation, I think we can say, yes, the injuries have been a factor, while we can also say, yes, there were issues even without the injuries. Like, that's kind of a, hey, multiple things to be true at once, right? And Chris, I think when you just look at the issues on offense, and there are still overall issues on offense, I think they're looking at it going, A, have not seen that improvement you were looking for, and B, these just procedural issues, the false starts, just the kind of lack of continuity, the lack of just rhythm up front, the fact that, I mean, you had what, I had it counted up and I wrote it down, 5 or 6 false starts in the game. I think 5 actual false starts, and then you have the illegal snap stuff. 5 different guys. So it's not just like, this guy is struggling with this, let's just either fix it or get him out of there. It's been throughout the year, multiple different guys. Kind of that to me probably pointed to, hey, there's a bigger issue at play here. Craig says need to find a center, and yeah, I think there's certainly been some communication problems. It's kind of one of those things, guys. Ultimately, there is no quick fix. There is no just, hey, if we fix this, it's better. But you read between the lines, you listen to Beamer, and you start picking up things around the program. And I think he just felt like, hey, we need a new voice. We've got to try something different.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with this one. And so first of all, Wes, you know how sometimes we talk about killing off narratives like the whole backup quarterback winning the Heisman against Carolina thing. We can now say for sure, we know what's happened in the past and how it's been handled. Some people have said Shane Beamer will never make an in-season coaching change. He's just not going to do it. And it is true. Another thing, 2 things can be true at once, that has not been his style. He is not a coach that is going to let outside noise or pressure get to him to where he says, okay, a lot of the fan base thinks this, so I'm going to do it. He's not someone, remember, he used the term yesterday on the teleconference, this is not a scapegoat situation. You will see coaches sometimes say, they don't say it, but they do it. They will dismiss a coach kind of just to shake things up. Things aren't going well. Let's shake it up. We know that Shane Beamer is going to take a very measured approach to this thing. In the past, it has not been what people wanted. He pointed to several examples. One of them was, of course, after the 2023 season. Carolina goes 5-7. The general thought was, hey, you need to shake up a bunch of your coaching staff. He ended up dismissing a coach, did some things behind the scenes, reassigned a coach, ended up keeping with continuity with some internal tweaks to try to get things better. And this following season, last year, generally hard to argue with those results, right? So to me, this does speak volumes that he went ahead and did this. We can't say anymore, Shane Beamer's not going to make a change if he thinks it's necessary. Can argue about whether it should have been done earlier. I saw a lot of that. Should have been earlier, too late. It's done now, right? So let's assess why and what the path is going forward. Interesting to me, Wes, and Beamer talked about this some yesterday. South Carolina had its best rushing performance of the season against LSU. And I know when you lose 20-10, when there's a lot of the same issues that we've been talking about all year, or frankly for a couple years, we do need to have a nuanced conversation that there was still some good in there. Go back and look at LSU and what they've done this season. Ole Miss put up 166 rushing yards. This is all sack adjusted totals. Kawan Lacey, their really talented back, had 87. Nobody else had gotten over 100 yards on the ground against LSU. Carolina goes in, has some sacks in the game, right, that were, had some negative plays. Came out with close to 200 rushing yards. You had the big explosive run by Matt Fuller, but you also had some Sellers runs. You had a really good game from Rasul Faison. I think the backs played better overall, but there were some holes in the running game against an LSU defense on the road that hasn't given up a lot this season. Beamer could have said, hey, we just had our best rushing performance. Maybe we're on the right track here. Maybe we are improving. But I think what happened is he went back and said, he took the opposite approach of saying, a word he used last night, Wes, to your earlier point, progression. I thought we would see more progression based on some of the strides we'd made last season. We needed to see that other step forward. Remember, Shane Beamer put the O-line basically on notice, I think this offseason, might have been back in the spring, when he was asked, what position group or what players do you need to see take a step forward? And he started with the offensive line, said it's time for those guys to step up. So he took the approach of looking back at the game and saying, we moved the football. We ran the ball. We had a lot of plays in LSU territory, and we came up with 10 points in the game, which is not, you're not going to win SEC games scoring 10 points. You can play very well on defense, get multiple turnovers. 10 points is not going to cut it. And I think he thought that a lot of the issues were up front. The procedural stuff, too many pressures, too many missed assignments. You're going to lose some one-on-ones in this league. We know that. That's obvious. When you play against the competition you play against with South Carolina, against a really good LSU defense. You look back, Wes, the Missouri game. You look back at that one and go, it's a coulda, shoulda game, Another game where you moved the ball well. No, you didn't run the football well, but you passed well. You had some times where you had protection, should have scored more points. You didn't. And the procedural stuff was really a big part of that. Against Kentucky, you probably left that game feeling like, man, we made some strides here in the procedural, with the procedural stuff. You had one false start against Kentucky. Can you take that show on the road and make that progression and get better to where you feel like, okay, we've turned this corner? They didn't. A lot of the same stuff that we've still seen. And so I think Shane Beamer got to a point where we need to try something new. We need to do something differently because whatever we're doing is not getting through with the procedural stuff. There's a lot in there, right? But I do think it was telling that after the best rushing performance of the season, where there was a lot of good, he still said, we've got to make a change here. We need a new voice. We need to try something different.
Chris, I also think I kind of wonder, is there a little bit of like, is there almost a little bit kind of all right, I see what these guys are capable of as well. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yes,
you don't, you can look at the Kentucky game and there is a little bit of fool's gold there. Like in anything you do against Kentucky this year at this point, based on body of work, like, yeah, it's a good win. You did what you were supposed to do. You took over the game. You ran the ball some in the fourth quarter. But nobody was sitting around saying, hey, all the problems are fixed. You beat Kentucky. And so you're going like, there is a little bit of fool's gold there. I think running the ball the way they did against LSU, still, it is one performance, but it's not one where you look at it, to your point about what they did against Ole Miss. You don't look at it and say, man, you just ran the ball all over a terrible defense. Like, this is a defense that can basically, shut you down and is going to put a lot of pressure on you from a sense of just, obviously pressure from a quarterback standpoint, but pressure on you in terms of shooting gaps, trying to blow up your run game, getting negative plays. And Chris, it's one thing when you look at the official number. I think it was 193 rushing. It is staggering when you take out the sacks. It is insane, actually, that this, according to PFF, they just the rushing total in this game. South Carolina rushed for 248 yards and a touchdown at LSU and lost the game. 248 yards. And I saw this take, and I'll be honest, you're watching the game, you don't always pick up the stats, right? Like, you have a feel for, sometimes you watch a game like, man, it feels like this team's rushed for maybe 100 yards or so. And you look, oh, they only rushed for 70. Or you're looking like, man, they've rushed for 150 yards. You don't always have a feel for it. I saw this take, well, yeah, they had a good day, but it was all on that Fuller run.
Nope.
Not the case at all. Not the case at all. Like, yes, you're going to skew. Anytime you have a long run like that, it's going to skew the numbers a little bit. First of all, it still counts. I'll take an explosive run every day. But if I get the thought in saying, hey, what did they do on like a down-to-down business in terms of – because if you rush for 70 yards on one play and then you were literally just getting stonewalled like every other play, right? You're just getting nothing. Yeah, maybe you say, well, the other team had one bust and we played terrible otherwise, right? So I do think there is some value in saying, let's take that out and see what they did otherwise. Chris, I have still not put out my takeaways from the game. I've been working through them. South Carolina managed 176 yards on the ground on the other 39 carries. So take out the one for 72, and you still have a day that if you blindly told me and they were rushed for 176 yards on 39 carries, I'd have said they're going to win this game.
Yeah.
And, in a lot of ways, to me, even though there were a lot of things that were different, it felt like watching the Missouri game because I was going, Missouri game, it was more they were throwing the ball all over them. This game, having success on the ground, didn't have much in the passing game. We'll get to that here in a second. But just the general feel of the game, I've never watched a season where you can have two games pretty close together where you are simultaneously and accurately saying, man, South Carolina should be winning this game, and also saying, man, how is this game even close? Because they were doing so many things well while also doing so many things to shoot themselves in the foot.
Yes. Yeah, well, and I think that's the theme, right? You've got two games. There are some eerie similarities, actually, between the first 6 games this season and the first 6 games last season. I kind of had that in my mind, and then I went back and looked at it. So last year, you had the road game against Bama where you lose by 2, and you look at it and go, man, we got some turnovers. We did a lot of good. What is the overall thought? We shot ourselves in the foot in that game, right? You had a chance in that Bama game last year after a turnover to go score, maybe pull away, fumble, right? And Bama goes and scores. You had the home game against LSU last year. We're taking out all the officiating stuff. You had too many penalties. You had turnovers. Yeah, your quarterback got hurt. You had too many things happen in that game to where you shot yourselves in the foot. Feel like you should have won that one. And then you even had the home, frankly, stinker, the late egg against Ole Miss. This year's version of that would be the Vandy game. I know Sellers missed the second half plus of that game, but you lost 31-7. Last year, Ole Miss 28-3. Couldn't do anything on offense. Same thing with the Vandy game, right? This year, your two near misses are the road game against Missouri and the road game against Ole Miss. 2 games where you look at it and you go, man, they did a lot of good things. What's the biggest problem? It's not that you walk away from both of those games thinking we really hurt ourselves more than anything in this game. And Shane Beamer pointed that out. I think it was on his post-game press conference, right? That before we go, he said he went in to the locker room and told his team, before we go kick other teams' butts, we have to start kicking our own. And that has been the theme of the season. That's been the theme in these 2 close losses. Carolina still could have rushed for 0 yards basically against Missouri and still won that game if they did not have some of those procedural problems and some of those huge negative plays. And really, it's the same against LSU. You know, some game, it'd be a different conversation if we're sitting here going, all right, Carolina once again couldn't run the ball, couldn't do anything on offense. Go look at the stats and go watch the game back. They moved the ball offensively. They just had too many issues with penalties and self-inflicted stuff. I think, Wes, and maybe we can dive into this a little bit more. There's been a lot of conversation about Lenore Sellers, you know, the throwaway with the intentional grounding, some of the decision-making there. I think the pressure has been so much that sometimes it's just affected his play overall. He has to bear some responsibility for that, obviously. And sometimes with protection, it's, you know, Beamer had a little mini rant about PFF, right? They don't know when the backs are involved in protection. They don't know as much when the tight ends are involved. There's truth in all that. But I think Beamer, looking back at the tape of the game on the plane ride home, probably came away with the thought of, hey, we've just got some problems here up front that's not just losing one-on-one battles, which is going to happen in this league. It's a lot of the procedural stuff. It's assignment-related things. It's technique-related things. And that's affected the whole operation, right? There just hasn't been a consistency to that. If you take this same team, Wes, the same team, the same performances, and if you just cut out some of the huge mistakes and some of the procedural stuff, not to be, oh, they're one play away, they're one this or that away.
All right, Dabo, here we go.
But there is some truth in that, right? You could take the same team, the same results, and if you cut that stuff out, and so as a coaching staff, you're going through, if you're Shane Beamer, you're thinking through that and saying, all right, if we can cut that stuff out or minimize it, this is a team that can play with these other teams. They did go on the road and move the ball against a really good LSU defense. They did go on the road against Missouri, which looks like a pretty good team. You know, had a tough one against Bama this weekend, lost by 3, had a chance to win the game late through a pick. You went on the road and played 2 really good teams and had your opportunities. Your other loss, you didn't have your quarterback for a half. So make of that what you will. That's the biggest thing that has to get cleaned up. And he clearly thinks having a new voice maybe could help that and could help this group that we all thought had more potential going into this season get a little bit closer to reaching that potential.
Yeah, and but before it's over, I do, this maybe gets pushed to later in the week, but I want to talk about kind of what expectations should be there. Like, how quickly can Sean Elliott make an impact? How big of an impact can a guy make in a short period of time? We'll see. I think it's still about, can you find your best 5? Which 5 do you have that are healthy? You know, I actually, Chris, I thought Nick Sharp kind of hung in there a little bit, gave you a little bit more maybe size at the guard spot after he had to come in due to an injury. There was a lot of different kind of versions of the O-line that were on the field on Saturday. You hated to lose Shed Surratt. He's been good for you as a freshman. You know, so yet another situation you're dealing with there. You were rotating at center, rotating at tackle. Just a lot of I mean, they were very disjointed in terms of the rotations there too. So, you know, I think just a big part moving forward is, can you just find 5 and then stick to them, hopefully get as many of them healthy, stick to that one unit as often as you can, and then kind of just move forward with it. But Chris, I do think before we kind of got into the game a little bit anyway, but let's complete kind of our overall Lonnie Teasley and O-line thoughts. You know, I do think, you know, I said this on Twitter, like, by all indications, Lonnie, great dude, has handled himself, has represented the school like very well the entire time. Anybody that's ever interacted with him, you can see why he was such a good recruiter. I would say, man, probably one of the like best assistant coach recruiters that South Carolina has ever had, in my opinion, at least since we've been covering it. And certainly the best O-line recruiter South Carolina has ever had. And regardless of what you feel about the season. And I know just O-line play was not good enough. That's why the decision was made. But I think we get caught in this thing where people are just like, well, he never did anything well. I don't think that's true. He was involved in some really good moments at the school. A lot of people credited him with kind of helping the O-line get going moving forward when he took over midseason for Greg Atkins. And this is someone, his guys very much love Lonnie. You know, his players love him. Recruits love him. If you're South Carolina, you're going to have to do some work to, you know, I know that Darius Gray, Zion Giles, they have all been in touch with the staff. You know, everything's good right there for now. Lots of 2027s that South Carolina already had a head start on. Highly, highly recruited players. Recruiting was never an issue with Lonnie Teasley in terms of going out and getting highly recruited guys. So I know Beamer talked about this yesterday too. You can't make the decision based on some recruits, but in terms of, again, trying to give the complete picture, trying to have some nuance here, it wasn't all bad. This will affect recruiting, at least in the short term, I think, in terms of you got to make sure you do everything you can to try to keep those guys, you know, in the fold.
Yeah, you do. I mean, if you're Carolina, you've got 3 offensive line recruits, commitments, I should say, with Anthony Baxter, in-state, early commitment. We haven't heard anything there, but I haven't heard anything that makes me think there'll be an issue there. And then, of course, Darius Gray and Zion Giles, who are 2 of the most highly rated, highly recruited guys in the country. Giles from Carver's Bay in the state of South Carolina. And then, obviously, Darius Gray from Richmond, Virginia, a 5-star who was wanted by about everyone in the country. And so, look, Lonnie Teasley was a big part of those recruitments. And you can tell, you know, go check out GamecockCentral.com for the full comments. But those guys were certainly disappointed, as you could imagine. But we saw, look, and maybe we'll get into this, Wes, you know, James Franklin, who's the head coach, not a position coach, dismissed at Penn State. They immediately lose their entire 2027 class. And I think they had some guys in the 2026 class express that, hey, I might be looking around. That would have been kind of your worst fear if a guy just immediately said, well, my position coach is out, I'm out too. That hasn't happened so far. And, you know, if you're Shane Beamer, you know that he's focused on trying to have all hands on deck recruiting, setting the culture. I think that's helped here, you know, in terms of stabilizing the situation. Is it something to keep an eye on going forward? Probably. I mean, Darius Gray, LSU, was a big factor for him. They were the runner-up, the close runner-up here. You have to imagine that their coaching staff was placing some phone calls. Hey, we just beat South Carolina and your coach is gone. What you think? But I don't want to say no concern at all, but I think you feel like the initial feedback there was about as positive as you could get given what happened. But you're right. I mean, offensive line recruiting, that's an area that South Carolina has done good work in. And it's not just Lonnie Teasley, right? It's been Greg Atkins still being involved, Roger Padroni, Sam Survey, of course, the director of recruiting for the offensive side of the ball for South Carolina, heavily involved in offensive line recruiting, Darren Usher, that entire staff. And it'll be all hands on deck to try to, you know, keep those guys going forward until there's a permanent solution here, which that's a question in and of itself, right, Wes? Probably too early to have that conversation. Where does Shane Beamer ultimately go for a permanent replacement? Because we just have the interim, here's what we're doing right now solution.
Yeah, for sure, man. All right. Hey, before we move forward, let's tell you about a couple of our other great sponsors. Tell you what, Chris, why don't you go first on this one and tell everybody about Palmetto Golf and Belts?
Yeah, let's tell them about Brandon Cohn's online shop at palmettogolfing.com. Great domain name, palmettogolfing.com. Palmetto Golf and Belts, that's Brandon Cohn, big South Carolina fan, longtime member of Gamecock Central. If you're on the Insiders Forum, as you should be, you see him there all the time, dropping new specials. If you are a golfer, it's a must check out on the store. Custom golf towels, gloves, and tees in the South Carolina Garnet, South Carolina, state of South Carolina blue, the palmetto tree and moon design. The cross design has been very popular. And also the outstanding needlepoint belts, very well made and a lot more affordable than other options you're going to find in retail stores. or online. So if you're a golfer, of course, you got to check it out. But if you're not, still go get yourself a needlepoint belt or find a gift for that golfer in your life. Palmetto Golf and Belts, palmettogolfing.com. Go check them out. Again, support the businesses that support us. Support Palmetto Golf and Belts at palmettogolfing.com. Go check them out. See if you can find something you like or that someone else in your life may like as well.
And guys, if you are looking for tickets to South Carolina football or other events, concerts, comedy shows, whatever it may be, hit up our friends at Gametime at gametime.co, or just go on the app stores and download the Gametime app. We've been telling you about Gametime for a couple of years now. Gametime app is giving the advantage back to fans as the hack for unlocking amazing tickets, experiences, in just a few taps. It is incredibly easy to use, and the Gametime guarantee means you can trust that you'll get 100% authentic tickets on time and at the best price. Plus, and this is my favorite part, fees are always included, so what you see is what you pay. One of my favorite parts about it, also, other than the fact that the fees are already included in there, you know exactly what you're going to pay, is the panoramic views. If you click a seat you're thinking about buying for that game, you're going to get an idea. Maybe you already know. Maybe you've been to Williams-Brice 1,000 times. You know exactly what that view looks like. But maybe you're going on a road trip for the first time. You want to go check out South Carolina at Ole Miss this year. You're going to get an idea of exactly what the view is going to look like from that seat just by tapping on it, which is another great aspect of the many features on the Gametime app. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with our friends at Gametime by downloading the Gametime app, create an account, and use code OWN3 for $20 off your very first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create an account, use ON3 for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Gametime app today. Or again, you can just go to gametime.co if that is more your speed. Shout out to both of those awesome sponsors. Chris, let's talk passing game, man. It was not what we've seen really for the last few weeks, I think, in terms of just South Carolina being able to get anything going in that area. I have not seen an all-22 version of this game. The TV copy, I hate it, to be honest. It's very, very difficult to tell, all right, were receivers open? What was the concept? What was the coverage? If a receiver was open, when was he open? Did he break open really after the play was, for all intents and purposes, over? Or what was he actually open? Was the pressure there? Or was the quarterback seeing ghosts and, you know, the pressure has kind of stacked up so much that he thought there was pressure even when there wasn't? I really felt like, Chris, as this game progressed, we did see Sellers kind of anticipate he was going to get pressure at times, even when it wasn't quite there. There were some missed wide receivers in terms of guys being open. You know, those are all things that are going to happen throughout the course of a game. So, you know, you can like get very nitpicky, like, hey, you missed that guy, you missed this guy. It's going to happen every week to an extent. But I do think this is probably a game where Sellers is going to go back, watch the film, and at least in terms of the passing game, not like everything he saw. And I do think, to give a little bit of credit in terms of matchups and opponent, this is probably the toughest test for South Carolina in terms of the opponent's defensive backs. Watching the DBs against Kentucky, watching the DBs against Missouri, Virginia Tech, even Vandy to an extent. I thought this was the best secondary South Carolina has faced in terms of the DBs being sticky in coverage, making good plays on the ball. There are a couple of throws to Vandrevius Jacobs where I'm going, hey, he had separation on those plays against other opponents. LSU really kind of classically, like we think about LSU having really good cover corners. Beamer mentioned, hey, they played a lot of man coverage. It wasn't that there was no one open. There were guys open at times. You could even see that on the TV copy. But I would also say you didn't get maybe that more consistent separation in terms of wide receivers versus DBs that I think we've seen really the last two games against Kentucky and Missouri.
Yeah, and I think you laid out a lot of the things that we saw. Is it this? Is it that? It was some of all of that at times. One of the plays that actually sticks out in my head because I saw our guy Jack Veltri had some, from the press box views of some of the plays in the game, which does give you a better look than the TV copy. The fourth down play, I think, was a really good, the 4th and 4. So late in the game,
thoughts.
4th and 4, LSU sends some pressure. South Carolina actually picks it up. Sellers gets the ball out early on a comeback, and the coverage was tight. It would have had to been a perfect throw, perfect catch type of thing. It's broken up. It's LSU's ball. I think you had trips to the left side. Vandrevius Jacobs ran a route. I think it was Rowe, I think, runs a route. If you hold on to the ball a beat longer, you might have gotten a defensive holding call. If the ball, because he cut across and then cut back deep down the field and got held, got turned around and held up. Now, you're relying on SEC officials to make that call. Point is, maybe you get the call, maybe it's broken up. We know Sellers throws a great deep ball, but he's trying to work the sticks, trying to go get a first down. It's tight. It gets broken up. I think we saw some of all that. There was legitimate pressure at times where Sellers doesn't have much of anywhere to go with the ball. You got to get rid of it. You're taking a sack. You're trying to scramble around. There were some times where there's some protection there, and Carolina wasn't able to get it off. And Shane Beamer mentioned, I think, a couple different plays during the game last night on a Sunday teleconference last night where, they thought they had something on and just weren't able to hit it in the passing game. So they ran the ball extremely well. The passing game is not, for a lot of reasons, I think, what they would have envisioned going into this game, though.
Yeah, and I think, I'm seeing stuff, hey, Sellers has regressed. That's a take right now. I mean, there's a lot. Here's the thing. We always are thinking about what we just saw. Yeah, if you watch just that game, you'd be like, that was not what you needed out of the passing game. You watch the two before that, you're going, hey, there's a lot of progress here as a passer. So, big picture, yeah, I get what people are saying, though. You have not seen the overall output that we saw last season, from Sellers at the quarterback spot. If and I'll be curious to see what does Shula, I'm sure he'll be asked, what does he say about that play call on Wednesday? We're not privy to know, hey, what's the read supposed to be? Where's the progression based on what you see pre-snap? It looked like he was looking Jacobs, which is where he went with the ball, pretty much the entire way. But you had tight man coverage out there. That's a ball. If they give you any kind of off coverage there and they're trying to not get beat over the top, you're 4th and very makeable. That becomes just that easy pitch. It's one of those plays where all the fans go, why are you playing so far off? You made that too easy. And so that's one of those where you go, hey, take the simple route if you have some off coverage out there. With the look they gave, again, I don't know where that blame is, but I hated the call. It was at some point it needed to be worked back the other way, or if they've been playing so much, like I said, very sticky man coverage. You've seen you're not just separating. I would have loved to see some type of rub route, some type of mesh, some type of bunch formate, something to give your guys a little bit better chance in a man beater concept as opposed to just routes. You know what I'm saying? It didn't feel like that was a concept play. It was more just hey, everybody's running individual routes. Somebody get open type thing. And like I said, I think Hunt was open on the other side, but for whatever reason, it was the first read that Sellers went to was just to the lone single receiver to the right side. So I would love to find out kind of the intricacies of that play, what you're looking for, what the various reads are. But, and they even talked about this. I would have liked to have seen maybe you get Sellers out on the edge on that as well. The announcers did make a good point. You were already into the boundary, so you're on the right hash. And so if you're going to try to get Sellers on the move, you're actually going to roll him into the short side of the field unless you're going to have him go against his arm direction. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that did, which hash you're on is a factor as well. So LSU just said, hey, there's one receiver into the boundary. We have our best cover corner on their best receiver. We're manning him up. We're being aggressive. And I mean, the kid, the DB for them made a phenomenal play, dude. Like that was like teach tape. Yeah. I feel like. So didn't love that call. I get the frustration from fans on that one. Like, I think here's the thing, man. Beamer made some pretty, I don't want to say pointed, but yeah, pointed. He made some comments on the teleconference yesterday where he acknowledged, like, hey, 2 or 3 weeks in, you're talking about some sample sizes. He's not going to overreact over statistics after a couple weeks, right? But, he used the word alarming, like, hey, there are some stats, and he didn't say specifically which ones, but you can do the math here. If you look at where South Carolina's offense is compared to the rest of the SEC, it's not where they want to be, and you're now at the halfway point of the season. So I thought that was a kind of that was a different answer than what it was 3 weeks ago, I feel like, in terms of his feelings on where the offense is right now.
Yeah, he said we're halfway through, we're 6 games in. So he mentioned he told the coaching staff that we know, what we've done well, where we've struggled, where we're limited, and where we've progressed. And so, what do you make of that, Wes? I think it's kind of, and I think Shane Beamer would say everybody's always on notice in the building. Everybody's always being held accountable, but he's made one move already, his first mid-season move. Do we see others? Well, he talked about that. Jack Veltri asked him, is this it? And I'm paraphrasing Jack's question, but is this it in terms of changes that you're planning on making or need to make? And Beamer said, for now it is. This is what I thought needed to be done right now. We'll see what that means, right? I think Beamer thought that this was the move, the offensive line move that needed to be made right now. But you do now have a better idea of what your team is. I think the issue, Wes, is that some of those things have been so inconsistent, right? Like if you look at the run game, yes, you just had your best rushing performance of the season, and not just against a random team. You pointed this out earlier. You had your best rushing performance of the season against a team that's been generally really good against the run. They gave up some yards to Ole Miss. Carolina had a better performance as the road team against LSU, but that's been inconsistent because you can point to other games this season where Carolina could not run the football. The Missouri game being the most alarming example. You look at the Missouri game from a passing standpoint, a lot of really good. This game, not so much good, right? So you have some ideas, and from here, it's about trying to narrow those things down and lean into what you do really well. But there's some areas where you've absolutely got to get better just as a baseline, right? And I think the area that Shane Beamer identified was, yeah, we can talk about, like they probably talked about that 4th and 4 play call. Not probably, they did. They go through everything. They talked about that 4th and 4 play call in the offensive staff meeting. They talked about it on Sunday night. But there's going to be those plays in every game. What's the one kind of common thread that's caused more of these struggles than anything else? And I think he felt like it was offensive line play and the procedural stuff up front is, hey, this is the one thing that we can try to make the best run at cleaning up. And if we can do that, we'll have a better chance the remainder of the season, the back half of the season.
Well, I think you're looking at it, man. You give yourself no chance. Like if you already have these issues offensively and you're trying to find some continuity, you're trying to have some down-to-down success, and then, you have this success, boom, false start. When you start 1st and 15 or you get a positive run and or even you just have like a 3-yard run and that 2nd and 7 becomes, 2nd and 12, you don't give yourself a chance at all when you're not an offense that has been good enough to just erase those. Some offenses, especially in college ball, you see them, they get behind the sticks, doesn't even matter. They just erase it like it's nothing. This offense has not been at that point, man. And, I think we all thought you were going to see progress, not just from the offensive line, like we talked about earlier, but progress from the offense overall. And, that's got to be very frustrating. I got to imagine to Shane Beamer that it just has not happened the way they envisioned. It hasn't happened the way a lot of people around the program envisioned from what we were hearing out of preseason camp in terms of the offense. So can it all just be magically fixed in a couple of weeks? No, it can't. So what can you do to try to spark it? I think it is one of those things, and people, they've already rolled their eyes at me on the Insiders Forum to an extent. Some of them have. When you tell people, hey, it's close, they don't want to hear that. There's a difference between, hey, it's close, like how many points are you scoring? And, hey, it's close when the coaches are watching the film and they're going, man, we need, if just this, and this would have been executed a little bit better, it's a completely different game. And we have seen that. I know people probably hate this example too, but we've seen South Carolina's team, we've seen South Carolina's offense find things at the end of the year and kind of take off from there. So they're going to stay the course in a lot of ways, but you were looking for a way, like the end of the 2022 season, they said, hey, let's take all the verbiage, all the extra stuff we're doing, scrap it, simplify. Let's just let Rattler go make plays, right? And we saw what could happen when you do that. Well, I think this is it's not the same, but it is a similar thing where you're going, we're not going to scrap everything, but we're going to just make changes to see, can you spark something? Can you get it going? Because you're going, hey, one more positive drive in this game Saturday night, you have a great shot to go win the game. And, I think I had maybe said before the game, red zone is going to be a massive factor in this game. And not all of South Carolina's drives made it quite to the red zone, but if you extend that out to like the high red area where you're talking about being in field goal range, and you're saying you've got a successful drive going, but can you turn it into 3? Can you turn it into 7? Or in cases for South Carolina, turn it into nothing. LSU is going the same thing. Hey, we're inside the 20. We're turning the ball over, kicking field goals. This was not a pretty football game. Let me just say that.
Yeah.
We don't have much time. I have thoughts on the greater college football landscape right now as well. Maybe we get to, maybe we don't. It was just ugly overall. Some of that was South Carolina defense making plays. We've talked offense the entire show, Chris. I do want to give a little bit of love to the defense hanging in there. We knew there would be some situations where they would be backed up. Can you force a field goal? Can you force a turnover? They did that multiple times in this game. That gave South Carolina a chance. They got after Nussmeier a little bit. Very uneven performance from him. You kind of saw the signs of the NFL guy. Then you saw some mistakes where he looked like a rookie, I feel like. And if you watch the broadcast, I don't know if anybody noticed, they spent no time whatsoever talking about his injury and the velocity in which he throws. I mean, good God.
Yeah. Ooh, they overdid that one a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways you got what you wanted if you were South Carolina, which is put some hits on him, put the game in his hands, make him make plays. I think the problem was when those opportunities presented themselves, we saw some of the good and some of the bad. The bad for South Carolina was, playing man coverage across the board with no safety help, turning a guy loose on a short route, missing a tackle, and then that guy's going in for a touchdown. That's the type of play that really, really hurts because they're not earning it as much. It's a pitch and catch, and then a guy's turned loose for a touchdown. Now, I'm kicking myself for not identifying Trey Green, their big tight end, as more of a concern because I look back at the stats and went, okay, he's been more of a red zone guy, but clearly one of the tweaks that LSU made during their off week was we need to get this guy more involved in the passing game. And they did. And he had 8 catches. I mean, he was a huge factor in the game, not just in the red zone, but, in between the 20s for LSU. The defense, were they more relying on turnovers? Listen to Brian Kelly. I think going into the fourth quarter of the game, hey, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. That's why we have a game. So for LSU's standpoint, they feel like we should be winning this game by 3 touchdowns, and we're not because we're turning the ball over. But you do have to give South Carolina credit for bearing down in the red zone. They earned those 2 turnovers. LSU didn't just hand them the ball with a smile. You're punching the ball out. We saw that in Georgia-Auburn, controversial play. You're punching the ball out on goal line drills. South Carolina does that, gets a turnover. Peyton Williams makes a great read, great play. So for LSU, you're going, God, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. South Carolina, you're earning that. You earn the good and the bad defensively. So in some ways, they did some things that really hurt. In other ways, they gave South Carolina a chance, in this game by getting some turnovers. And I think the other thing, Wes, not getting some pressure on Nussmeier at times, but just like last year, he just has a knack for just getting the ball out just in time. And I think we saw that a bunch. At one point, I look up and think LSU had 5 sacks of Sellers. South Carolina has no sacks of Nussmeier because he's able to just get that ball out just quick enough. And I think you credit him, but you also credit LSU schematically. Clearly, that's a big part of their game plan of let's not sit here and hold the ball forever against the South Carolina defense.
Yeah, for sure. And Trades Green, I'm with you, man. I was texting with somebody and I was like, dang, I did not have him in the scouting report at all. Like, I don't think we mentioned him. Lead in on radio, lead in on podcast, didn't write about him. That guy's a dude. And I'm with you, man. They probably went back and said, hey, what do we have on offense that we have not been taking advantage of? And somebody looked up and was like, well, that guy's 6'7" and has a basketball background. So maybe we should get him the ball. And, I want to go back to what I bookmarked earlier. I've seen this take a lot. Trades Green and Nick Harbor are not the same skill set. They're just not. Like, I get it. Nick is massive. I get it. But Green is taller, slower, and has a basketball, go up and get the football, high point the ball skills background. Nick has a track background. The skill sets are just different. Like, I'm not saying you can't use Nick's size to the advantage of your team, but just being like, hey, our best play is to isolate him and throw the ball up is really just not a example of what Nick Harbor's skill set is, in my opinion. So, like I said, I've just seen that take a lot. I don't really think it holds up, but credit, to LSU and those guys for using Trades Green to their advantage. And it was a true advantage, man. Like, there was some really good coverage on this guy and just didn't matter because he went up and got the ball. And credit to Nussmeier as well. He made some throws where, he's putting the ball where just his guy can go get it, right? Like, that's the other half of that. It's not just, let's throw the ball at him. It's, can you put that ball to where he can go get it? He can use his size, his advantage, but that DB cannot make a play on the ball. So sometimes you just credit the opponent, I think, on some of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the red zone throw is a great example of that where, you've got pretty tight coverage, but you got a guy that's 6'7" that can jump out of the gym, and you put a ball on him that if Trades Green doesn't catch it, nobody else on the field is catching it. So, yeah, I mean, that was something really good that they did. I think another thing, Wes, we talked about going into this game. If you're LSU, you're sitting there going, all right, South Carolina struggled to run the ball. Let's make sure that they don't run the ball in this game either. And honestly, they failed that test. South Carolina ran the ball pretty well, very well throughout the game. not only with the long explosive run, but even taking that out, they ran the football well. I think if you're South Carolina, you go in, same thing. LSU had not run the football very well this season. I think if you're the defensive staff for Clayton White, you're sitting there going, yeah, they had too many runs in this game that helped them, stay ahead of the sticks and created a few explosive plays there too.
Yeah, and letting Nuss get out of there and just take off running too on some man covered situations, that kind of hurt. I thought, and he's got a knack, man. His pocket presence. Say what you want about some of his other stuff, decision making, and the injury coming in, but his just knack for maneuvering in the pocket, getting the ball out, or taking off running is pretty special. So kudos to him on that as well. Nathan asked about Cisse. No real update yesterday. Beamer just said, hey, all those guys. So you're missing about 4 starters / could be starters if you throw in Nolan Hay with Case and Henry, Cisse, and then Shed Surratt. All those guys, just questionable right now. We'll see. They're going through tests, and we'll see what happens moving forward. So no real super in-depth update there on Cisse. All right. With Chris, what a weird day, man. Let's close this thing out. What a weird day in college football on Sunday. I'm thinking, I even messaged like the On3 National guys, like, hey, there's some coaching news here at South Carolina. Fairly big news, at least in this market. And then, boom, James Franklin fired at Penn State. Have you ever seen there was this thought about a year ago, and we saw it play out like this. I don't think it was just a thought. There's this thought, man, it's really more important to put your money into NIL than paying coaching buyouts. So we're not going to fire people. We're just going to put more money into NIL because that's where this cash needs to go. Well, that lasted for all of one season because right now, this is the first big domino to fall, but we've already seen people getting fired. Virginia Tech, they didn't waste any time in making their move. Penn State now doesn't waste any time. Lots of other jobs are going to open this season. And, it is going to be a wild coaching carousel. But have you ever seen somebody so quickly go from 3 weeks ago, man, I'm watching James Franklin on the game day set with the entire crew dressed in white for the whiteout.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Saban is wearing a mascot suit, and James Franklin is talking about this is going to be the best atmosphere in college football history as they face a top 5 opponent. They are the center of college football for that day. They're coming off a college football playoff appearance last year. Here we are 3 weeks later. Boom, drop the axe. He's out, fired, and it was not an off-the-field thing. This was not a fall from grace, like something happened off the field that just they have to get rid of you. Purely on the field, we're over it, we're done. Is this a be careful what you wish for move by Penn State in 3 or 4 years? Or is this Penn State saying, we are Penn State, we don't settle for mediocrity? Not that what he's done has been mediocre by anybody else's standards by any means, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question, because Penn State fans are obviously very frustrated right now. They were frustrated going into this season. A lot of things at play because, they felt like they couldn't win the big game, which there's truth in that. But they did make the college football playoff last year. They were close last year to advancing in the college football playoff. You did a really good job of retaining, and there were high expectations for this season to be the year. And then you not only didn't meet them, you really, really fell off by losing to, 3 straight games. The Oregon game was tough. Maybe that broke this team, Wes. I don't know. And then you lose 3 straight games, and 2 of them are to UCLA on the road, who had been now they're the hottest team in the country, apparently. They were horrible. You go lose that game, and then you lose to Northwestern, and you lose your quarterback. And I think another thing, Wes, I don't know if you watched James Franklin's post-game press conference, but he was asked directly, do you still want to be the head coach at Penn State? And he kind of reverted to the cliches. He didn't answer it at all. Not only didn't answer it forcefully, he didn't answer it at all. He just said, I'm committed to the kids in that locker room. It's a very strange answer. I wonder, does Penn State have an idea lined up of where they want to go? It can certainly get worse because we've seen it in college football and we've seen it at Penn State. But they may just feel like, hey, we got to make a move now. We're going in the wrong direction. The trajectory's not there. We need to shake things up. It'll be important that they nail the next hire, though, because what James Franklin did there, understanding he didn't reach where they wanted to, he did some really good things there. So definitely a fascinating move in the sport.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think this is one of those things where, I mean, maybe I'd have to look at what some of the Penn State local guys are saying or even reach out to them. You got to think it couldn't have been a complete surprise there. Like, this is a type thing you typically will have heard kind of bubbling up to the surface behind the scenes. And I'd imagine, I mean, dude, it sounds to me like they were just looking for their reason. And once they didn't beat Oregon, which, by the way, comes down to one play in overtime, how different is your season right now if you make one play and win that game? I think, but once you're like, add in that answer and then add in like the result, they fired him, you kind of had already made up your mind. I think that you were just ready for a change. And he was there for 13 years? Is that right?
12 or 13, yeah. Something like that.
12 going on 13. If you're somewhere for that long, man, people just get tired of you to an extent.
Yep.
They get tired of your cliches. They get tired of your press conferences. I mean, he's going to the playoff. He's winning double-digit games, but Carolina Titans said some teams have no tolerance for mediocrity. I mean, I know they weren't winning the big one, but most places on earth are going to take the outcome that Penn State has had the last few years. And it just be very careful what you wish for. Like, it's easy to say, we're not going to accept that. What if you miss on your first guy? What if you think you have somebody lined up and then you don't and you're starting over? Also, a greater thought here, Chris, you and I have talked about this already, but really the two national programs we thought brought back more overall depth and overall starters and production, retention, Penn State and Clemson. This is completely thrown, I think, on its head the thought that, hey, if you can still develop, you can still retain guys on your roster, you can still win. You got to use the portal, but you can still win in a little bit more traditional way by just retaining your guys. This is a college football playoff team. They brought back a lot of people, and they're sitting there at 3-3.
Yeah, and I mean, Clemson's in that same boat. Those are two teams that were darlings, and probably on paper, rightfully so, right? They're both college football playoff teams, and they brought back the talent that got them there, and so it's natural to say, okay, they can do at least that, or they can probably take the next step because those people they're bringing back can take a step forward. They added some pieces, right? And it hasn't clicked. I certainly don't think that means, hey, well, it's not the way now to retain your talent. You obviously want to retain your best players. I think both of those situations stand on their own, but it is fascinating, to think about that. And I just think a lot of our preconceived notions or even things that have happened in the past, Wes, have been challenged by this season because it's been such a unique, such a crazy season. You can't really wrap your head around anything or point to any, is there any truth in college football this year? It really doesn't seem like there is. And that's what's made it fun and fascinating to follow throughout the year.
Well, and ultimately, man, if a game comes down to a handful of plays and you don't make those plays, then your entire program can be affected by, hey, didn't make the play you needed to win this game. It spirals, and then here you sit with the certainly the biggest opening to this point for this season. All right, y'all, we are more than out of time. Appreciate y'all hopping on and joining us. Appreciate y'all hanging in with us. I'm sure Jack and Kendall will have a show midweek. Chris and I will be back Thursday afternoon to preview South Carolina. There is a game coming up as well. South Carolina versus Oklahoma. Gamecocks look to bounce back. Oklahoma looks to bounce back after being kind of exposed a little bit from Texas. Arch Manning. Those guys looked pretty good on Saturday. So Jeff just says bye. Okay, Jeff. Bye to you as well. Bye to the rest of you. Appreciate y'all joining. He's Chris. I'm Wes. We'll see y'all soon.